A stained glass window in the chamber house of the Rochester Bridge Trust, commemorating Sir Robert Noddy's as one of their benefactors. Gillingham Green Church, where Thomas Knowles married Elizabeth Knight on 16th of June 1595. Snodland Church, where John Knowles married Sarah Cox on the 27th of November 1676. Ainsford Church, where in May 1721 William Knowles married Mary Cox, but their children were all baptised at Ryash Church. Borden Alf Church, where John Knowles married Mary Atwood on the 13th of January 1747, and where William Knowles and his wife Mary Cox are buried. Carol from Canada and Jill stand by the headstone of their 5 times great-grandparents. Some of William and Mary's family moved to and farmed at Old Saw Manor near Plaxtel. The family worshipped in Plaxtel Church, and in a vault under the centre aisle 4 young Knowles children are interred, all dying within a month of each other in 1771. Their parents were also buried in the vault. 2 members of the family are commemorated on the Plaxtel War Memorial, and the old forge was the home of Eleanor after her husband died in the mid-1840s. The inventory of William Knowles, dated 1739, details all his household goods room by room and his farming equipment and livestock. The total value was £710, 10 shillings and 6pence, quite a large sum in 1739. This cottage in Tunstall was the home of William Knowles and Elizabeth Smead. Bobbing Church, just outside Milton Regis, is where Edward Knowles, who was born in 1802, married Mary Wildish on 17th of February 1825. They settled in Milton, and Edward opened a seed shop and sold bread and vegetables. The church at Milton Regis has been the venue of many Knowles weddings, baptisms and burials. John Knowles, who was from Ospringe near Faversham, married Ethelinda Hull on the 11th of November 1798, and Edward Knowles, born in 1836, married Mary Wiles on the 27th of December 1858. A family plot is the grave of Horace Knowles, his first wife Laura Cavell, and their daughter Laura Christina Lavinia, also his third wife Ellen Nellie Saunders. This map indicates the location of the churches in Kent connected to the Knowles family that we have just viewed. Edward Knowles, born 1836, and with his wife Mary Ann Wiles. Their daughter, Bernice, was married at Milton Regis Congregational Church to Andrew Wilson in 1899. The whole family of Edward and Mary and the wedding group photographed at the rear of Edward's home, Blenheim House. Edward and his second wife, Margaret Potter, in the garden and on the front step of Blenheim House to celebrate his 78th birthday in 1914. Edward and Jill, Edward's great-great-grandson and great-granddaughter, imitate their pose 104 years later. 46 High Street, Milton Regis, home of Edward, born 1802, and the childhood home of Edward, born 1836. Milton High Street, looking towards the High House with the old town hall and its clock just visible on the extreme right-hand side. 56, 58 and 60 High Street, the shops of Edward and his son Horace. The High Street as it would have been in Edward's time. A 2010 photo with changed shop fronts in the near right and the High House with the post office sign visible across the road. The lower end of the High Street down the hill before all the new roadways were constructed. Edward's home further up on the right. The shops again showing the legendary Hind House next door. Edward's home, Blenheim House. In order to expand his business, Edward opened shops in several locations, run by his sons and families. The eldest, another Edward, went to Faversham. He is pictured by the pump that he has asked his staff to collect water from as a protest against the council's increased business water rates. Faversham shop, with his daughter Annie in the doorway and "your old friend Knowles," as he styled himself. Edward with sons Charlie, John and Harry in his Model T Ford, 1921. Alice, Fanny and Edward Jr., the children of Edward and his first wife, Alice Fanny Collard. Daughter Alice as she grew up and with a niece or nephew and the family dog. Edward of Faversham's second wife was Anne Hams. Her mother was Mary Ann Hams, née Mackley, pictured here with her grandson Charles. Charles seen again here with his brother John, aka Jack, on the right. John Knowles in his sailor suit, and many years later in his evening suit with his wife Mary Elizabeth Wilbraham, known to the family as Elizabeth. They were photographed with family at the Loyal and True 40/50 Masonic Ladies' Night, and again in later years looking very relaxed. Elizabeth and John's sons, Rufus and Norman, taken in 1920, and in 1995, looking through some family photos. Rufus looking smart in his RAF uniform. Another of John's sons, Raymond Ian Knowles, also served in the RAF. The next son was Norman, who went on to raise a large family and become a cinema manager. Seen here first at age 15, then in his RAF uniform, with his first wife Marjorie, and with their son Peter sitting on the family car. Peter in more recent years, and his three daughters. Sarah, Nicola and Claire. Norman's second wife is Mary, taken on their wedding day. They have 7 children, including 1 set of twins, here seen with 2 older brothers at the hospital where they were born. Norman seated under a tree with all his brood. Left to right, Natalie, Andrew, Edward, Simon, Rebecca, Maria and James. The family in the garden and at a celebration for Norman's 80th birthday. All the siblings and Mary at the wedding of Andrew to Donna Miller in 2012. Andrew and Donna's lovely firstborn son, Harry, who tragically did not survive. A cheeky smile from their second son, Jack, taken in 2017. Norman and Mary's son, Edward, married Victoria Jenkins, and they are seen here with Edward's daughter Ava as a bridesmaid, followed by the siblings group, and then with siblings, spouses and children. Ava holds Thomas, who seems very interested in the grandfather clock that once belonged to his 3 times great-grandfather, Edward. Thomas testing the soil in Ivan's garden. Edward and Andrew at a loyal and true ladies' night. Back to the roots of Edward of Faversham's branch of the family. Annie Knowles, his daughter, as a bridesmaid, aged about 10. Annie married Leslie Clarence Couchman. Edward is seated on the right-hand side, his wife Anne seated second from the left. And in the back row can be seen Annie's brothers, Charlie, John and Harry. And seated in front of the bride is her half-brother, Alan. The bride and groom, Annie and Leslie. Annie holding her first child, Muriel, at her christening in 1927. With Muriel again, and Muriel with her brother, John. Annie and Les Couchman on the beach at Ramsgate, with Muriel and Grandma Knowles in Faversham. John in his RAF uniform and again in later life. Edward of Faversham and his wife Anne had a son, Norman, born in 1899, seen here in his pram. Sadly, Norman survived less than a year, as can be seen on the memorial card. Edward and Anne's next son was Harry, destined to join the family business in Faversham and become the town's mayor. The infant Harry as a teenager, and a copy of his Defence of the Realm permit book dated 1914. Three brothers with their wives, John and Elizabeth, Harry and Nellie, and Charles and Harriet, taken at the wedding of their sister Annie. Harry and Nellie in the early 1950s. Harry in his mayoral robes in the Hythe Water Canal Carnival, probably taken in 1953, coronation year, judging by the tribute to the Queen on the boat in the background. In his robes, and the mace can be seen on the table beside him. Harry and Nellie had 4 children, Harry, Colin and Mary, seen as a group. Mary, their other daughter, is Prudence. Their 12 grandchildren are pictured here at their golden wedding celebration in 1972. Prudence and her husband, Peter Latham, taken in 2017. We return again to Edward of Faversham, and next comes his son, Charlie Knowles. Charles is pictured here with his wife Harriet and his sister Annie on the right and Harriet's sister on the left. Infant Charlie in 1894 and with his brother John, aka Jack. Charlie and Harriet leaving the church in Faversham after their wedding in 1913 and with their bridesmaids and best man. From the left, Nellie and daughter Prudence, Alan Knowles and wife Sybil, Charlie and Harriet. Photo probably taken by Harry. Charlie in his cricket whites and a borrowed officer's uniform that he was supposed to take to the cleaners to get pressed, not have his photo taken in. On the extreme right, Charlie outside his Whitstable shop at 39 High Street, which no doubt displayed his trademark poster. This shot shows that they were still trading as E. Knowles and called Covent Garden, as was the original Milton Regis shop. The Whitstable shop, followed by a photo probably taken at a Masonic ladies' night of Charlie's son Gordon and his wife Phyllis. Charlie and Harriet's son Gordon, their daughter Hazel and her husband Mervyn Tutt. Eric, Gordon and Hazel as children and Charlie with Hazel and wife Harriet. Charlie's son Gordon with his brother Eric in their sailor suits and with their mother Harriet and her sister Auntie Dolly. Gordon married Phyllis Stringer in 1939. Gordon on the right with Dad Charlie and brother Eric at the 1967 Cup Final at Wembley. Rufus, Eric, Charlie and Gordon taken in the shop yard with the fruit baskets to the side. Gordon was worshipful master at this ladies' night in the late 1950s. His son, Ivan, is seated on the left beside his mother. His sister Hazel is seated on the floor in front of him, and her husband, Mervyn, is in the back row. Gordon and sister Hazel. Gordon and Phyllis at their son Ivan's wedding to Yvonne Edwards at Canterbury Cathedral in 1964. Ivan and Yvonne, then with Uncle Eric, Dad Gordon and Grandad Charlie. 4 generations of Knowleses, Gordon and Ivan with Charlie holding Ivan and Yvonne's son Paul. 4 different generations of Knowleses, Gary and Paul, Ivan and Yvonne's sons, Eric standing behind Gordon, who is holding Paul's 2 girls, Lauren and Charlotte. Ivan looks on. Ivan with his 2 sons at Twickenham. The Whitstable shop, run by Gordon and family, was converted to a leisure centre run by Ivan and Yvonne. Paul's wife, Evelyn Sperring, and their daughter Lauren as bridesmaids at a friend's wedding. Ivan and Yvonne's daughter-in-law Evelyn and 2 granddaughters, Lauren and Charlotte. A Christmas gathering of the Whitstable Knowleses, Eric with sons Patrick, Michael and Charles, and nephew Ivan. The first gathering hosted by Ivan and Yvonne, Edward, Vicky, James, Andrew, Ivan and Jim, Yvonne, Mary, Donna, Frankie, Jill and Becky, plus the men of the group. Charlie and Harriet's second son was Eric. These first few photos we have seen before with Gordon's photos. Eric and brother Gordon, the boys with their mother, with Charlie and Rufus, and at the FA Cup final. The photo of Eric, Mervyn and Charlie also contains an unknown. Eric's wedding to Sheila Tappenden in 1940 with his brother Gordon as best man and his sister Hazel as a bridesmaid. Eric's second wife was Vera Waller née Draper. They were married in 1968 at Caxton Hall. Eric, leaning on the rail at Royal Ascot, apparently unaware that the Queen is behind him in the centre of the photograph. One of Eric's sons, Michael, married Mavis Reynolds in 1965. He is seen here inside his nutrition centre and the shop front in Whitstable High Street. Another son of Eric, Patrick, seen here on his wedding day to Jean Ward in 1969. Returning to Charlie's children, Hazel his daughter as a young lady and with her father outside the Whitstable shop. Hazel with her parents and at her wartime wedding to Mervyn Tutt in 1940. Hazel and Mervyn at a ladies' night and on holiday. Alan Knowles, son of Edward of Faversham, on Eric's motorbike. Having come all the way down the line of Edward of Milton's son, Edward of Faversham's descendants, we return to the next child of Edward of Milton and his wife Mary Ann Wiles. Mary Ann Knowles, aka Aunt Polly, did not marry and is seen here in a portrait setting and on a swing in the rear garden of her father's home, Blenheim House. She was an accomplished needlewoman who made tablecloths for all her nephews and nieces as wedding gifts. Edward, 1836, next daughter was Margaret Alice Knowles, who married Harry Gardler. Their daughter Marjorie was a bridesmaid at the wedding of Margaret's sister Bernice in 1899. Margaret can be seen with her children aboard the boat that took them to Canada. A 1949 photo of the Gardler and Cox families and friends taken near Edmonton, Alberta. Harry Edward Gardler and Donald George Gardler, the sons of Margaret Knowles, in 1969. Marjorie, and Marjorie again with Carol, and Betty, all granddaughters of Margaret Alice Knowles. The same three ladies with their husbands, Clarence Christensen, Dave Roos and Jim Ricer. A photo taken in Victoria, BC in 1947 of Marjorie Cox, née Gardler, Carol Gardler with her parents, Carrie and Donald Gardler. Donald Gardler was born in Milton Regis in 1905 and he died in Canada in 1983. Ronald Gardler was Carol's brother and therefore a grandson of Margaret Knowles. Finally, Carol's family, so the great and great-great-grandchildren of Margaret Knowles of Milton Regis, who lives in Seattle, USA, near Cologne, Germany, and in Canada. Going back once again to Edward of Milton, born 1836. Another son was William. He married Harriet Ann Ackhurst, and they are seen here with their family in 1935 in the garden of their home, Charlton House, Sittingbourne. The little boy on the far left is their grandson, William, who grew up to be the original researcher of the family history. Yet another William, son of the first and father of the second William, taken in 1899. Emily, daughter of William and Harriet, was a bridesmaid to Bernice in 1899. Stanley Knowles, a son of William and Harriet, with his wife Violet Hubbard and with their 3 children and their spouses, daughters Yvonne and Anita with husbands Dave Orpin and Brian Whelan, son John with wife Sheila George. Violet nee Hubbard, her daughter Anita, followed by John, Anita and Yvonne, and Anita braving a ride on a lion. William and Harriet's son Frank married Violet Kathleen Mansfield in Queenborough on the Isle of Sheppey on the 29th of August 1932. Their family guest list. The original tree of that part of the Knowles family as given to Jill by William. We now come to Edward of Milton's son James Pankhurst Knowles, who became the founding father of the Dublin branch of the family. JPK standing with his father Edward and brother Horace. JPK and Charlotte Longley with some of their family in about 1939. James and his wife Charlotte. Their son Arthur. Their daughter-in-law Florence, aka Kitty, Percy's wife. Their granddaughter Shirley, Arthur and Gertrude's daughter. Sarah Ellen, JPK's daughter, aka Nellie. Charlotte, JPK's daughter, aka Lottie. Their son Percy. Their daughter-in-law Gertrude, aka Gertie, Arthur's wife with baby Nigel. Mildred Strouts, Sidney's wife, taken in about 1900 and with the family group in 1939. Dudley, son of Sidney and Mildred. We assume that Sidney took the photograph. Dudley Knowles with his grandmother Sarah Mary Strouts, née Longley, in about 1935. Charlotte Knowles with her 2 single daughters, Sarah and Charlotte, Nellie and Lottie. Sidney Knowles, wedding to Mildred Strouts in 1923 with Frank, Charles and Sarah Mary Strouts. Dudley and Ursula in the early 1950s and on their wedding day in 1958 with family. Dudley and Ursula had 2 children, Barry and Karen, seen here with their parents. Dudley at the wedding of his son Barry to Geraldine née Gaffney in 1991. Barry and Gurr pose at the same place on their silver wedding anniversary. A family group from 1969. Mildred, Ursula, Karen, Sydney, Barry, not forgetting Heather the dog. Sydney and Mildred in Mallorca in the 1950s. Mildred and dog at home in Terenure, 1930s. Sydney and Mildred at home in Rathgar, 1950s. Finally, Mildred modelling Sydney's World War I uniform. The Grafton Street shop, and again after the 1916 riots and looting. Bringing that branch of the Dublin family up to date, we have Barry and Gurr in Ivan's Garden in 2017. Their daughter Laura and their son Frank. Barry, Andrew, Ivan and Edward pose and lunch continues. Barry and family on holiday in Nepal in 2017. 3 of the grandchildren of JPK and Charlotte took holy orders. Desmond Lawrence became Father John, seen here also in later years. Sidney Leonard became Father Paul. Their daughter Sheila became a nun and died in California, USA. Back once more to Edward of Milton. His son Horace followed him in the Milton shop and post office. Horace seated with his father Edward and brother James Pankhurst Knowles. Horace's first wife, Laura Cavell, died young, leaving him with 2 children, Horace Jr. and Laura Christina Lavinia. He married Matilda Mackenzie, née Webster, 2 years later, and they lived at Chestnut Cottage. They had 5 children together, Edward, Gladys, Douglas, Stuart, and a baby named Dorothy, who died at birth. Matilda also died young. She was 37, leaving him with 6 children. His third wife, Ellen Saunders, died within a year of their marriage, and he did not marry again until much later in life to Minnie Kennett, seen here holding his granddaughter Jill as a baby. Horace Jr. went to America and served in the US Army in the First World War. Commemoration from his grave in Portland, Maine. His sister, Laura Christina Lavinia, seen as a bridesmaid in 1899. She died in the 1918 influenza epidemic. Horace's eldest son by his second wife was Edward, seen here as a young lad, and then at a niece's wedding in 1959. His daughter Gladys married Herbert Williams, and they had a son, Herbert Lewis Knowles Williams, aka Boy. Gladys's daughter was Barbara, who went to live in America. Horace and Matilda's son Douglas, holding the pony's reins for his brother Stuart in the yard of the Milton shop. The young Douglas grew up to become chairman of Sittingbourne and Milton Regis Council in 1952-53. He read the declaration of the accession to the throne of Queen Elizabeth II from the steps of Sittingbourne Town Hall. The chairman's dinner dance was a family affair that year, as the guests of honour were Harry Knowles, Mayor of Faversham, and his wife Nellie. Douglas on baby duty. Douglas and Doris with brother Stuart and his wife Florence and their daughter Jill. When Douglas took over the post office from his father, he moved it across the road into the High House, a James I building, originally built for a silk merchant. The local newspaper reported his retirement after 37 years as sub-postmaster, the business having been in the family for about 112 years. He married Doris Dodds, who worked at Riddham Dock in World War I, seen here on the extreme left of the photo of the officers and civilian staff. Her autograph book from the same period has several Knowles signatures on the wall of friendship and cartoons drawn by her work colleagues. Stuart, the youngest child of Horace and Matilda, with Douglas and as a teenager. Stuart with his first wife Edna Hunt, who died just after giving birth to their daughter Mary Jean, aka Jean, in 1930. Jean in the Knowles' orchard in Milton with Stuart and with grandfather Horace. She was a choir girl at a church in Paddington after they moved to London, and then she became a nurse for a short time. She married Roy Alex Sinclair in Herne Bay in 1959. They are photographed at the wedding of their son Gordon to Karen Thurlow in 1994. Roy died in 2017 at the age of almost 99. Jean with sons Andrew and Gordon and grandsons Sam, Thomas, Scott and Aaron, daughters-in-law Karen and Ruth. Stuart's second wife was Florence Webster from London. The wedding group has Horace on the left and Gladys's daughter Barbara as a bridesmaid, as well as Jean and Roy, Gladys's son, as a page boy. Taken on Jean's 16th birthday. They lived at Orchard Villa in Milton, then moved to London in 1939. Jill's christening group shows Horace at the back with his fourth wife Minnie, Stuart and Jean on the right, and the Webster grandparents front left. Stuart Knowles with Charlie Littlewood, who owned the Foundry Forge in Milton. Stuart and Florence Knowles behind the bar of their public house, the Rose Inn, Herne Bay, about 1962, and outside with Jill. Douglas Knowles gives his niece Jill away at her wedding to James Close in 1974. Wedding group with Jean and family and the Close family. Jill and Jim owned the post office at Minnis Bay from 1978 to 1984. And then moved to C Street Post Office, Herne Bay, in 1984 until 2007. The last day at C Street with daughter Catherine and Wally. Catherine in the garden at Minnis Bay. And practicing to be her cousin's bridesmaid in 1987. Her own wedding to Simon Coish in 2012 and the family group. We return to our Edward of Milton again. His youngest son Charles was sent to Aberdeen with brother JPK to expand Edward's business empire. JPK, as we've seen, started another branch in Dublin, but the business ran jointly for many years. Charles, with brothers Edward and James at his sister Bernice's wedding in 1899 with his wife Jessie Simpson. Charles and Jessie's children, Edward, Francis, Mary and Charles. A poster from the Aberdeen shop, which was in Union Street, showing the locations and phone numbers of 4 shops. By the time he retired, he owned 7 shops, 2 houses and quite a lot of land. Unfortunately, we have no knowledge of the current Knowles family in Scotland, but the business continues under new ownership, but still trades as Knowles Food Services. Finally, the last of Edward Knowles and Mary Ann Wile's children, daughter Bernice. She married Andrew Wilson at the Congregational Church, Milton Regis in 1899. And the reception was held and photos were taken at Edward and Mary's home, Blenheim. Amongst the bridesmaids, we have identified Alice Fanny, daughter of Edward of Faversham, Laura, daughter of Horace, and Emily, daughter of William, all nieces of the bride. A gathering of some of the clan in Herne Bay in 2016. The Knowles' shops and their owners. 46 St Peter's Street, Canterbury, Eric. Whitstable with Charlie Knowles, just visible on the right. East Kent Gazette article about the Faversham business in the time of Harry Knowles. High Street, Whitstable, a sweet shop run by Phyllis, wife of Gordon. The fire brigade still present after a fire in the flat above the shop. The 3 Milton Regis shops in Edward and Horace's time. Milton Regis Post Office, Douglas Knowles. The Dublin shop in Grafton Street after the 1916 riots, JPK. The Grafton Street shop prior to the vandalism. 2 postcards of Grafton Street, Dublin. A postcard of Aberdeen, Union Street, the location of one of Charles Knowles' shops. Faversham shop, Edward, his daughter Annie in the doorway. The Faversham shop, Edward. The Faversham shop dated Saturday, August 2004, and along the bottom, ready for the rush. Canterbury, Eric. Mortimer Street, Herne Bay, and again with Eric Knowles outside. A casino on Margate seafront owned by Gordon and Ivan. Hazel and Mervyn's shop at Margate in 1966, and with them standing outside on the left. Hazel and Mervyn's retirement thank you poster to their customers. A Margate shop poster using Lloyd George's name. The casino, leisure centre owned and run by Ivan and Yvonne. The casino, when it was still a family fruit and vegetable shop, owned and run by Gordon and family. The nutrition centre, owned by Michael Knowles in Whitstable High Street. Ramsgate shop with Eric and Gordon outside. Ramsgate shop with Rufus and Gordon outside. A wartime Christmas poster from the Ramsgate shop in 1915. The current Knowles Food Services wholesalers in Aberdeen, no longer owned by the family. The shops that we have no photos of, but certainly were owned by the family. 2 greengrocery shops in Sheerness, started by William Knowles and handed down to his son and grandson. A greengrocery shop in Dover, and a painter and decorator supply shop in the High Street, Sittingbourne. Rose ceremony. In the 14th century, the wife of Sir Robert Knowles had a bridge built across the road from her house in Seething Lane to her newly planted rose garden, without the necessary consents. She had to pay a rent of a red rose to the Lord Mayor every June. That ceremony continued for hundreds of years. The tradition was restarted by the Watermen and Lightermen of London from their church at All Hallows by the Tower, where the Knowles family worshipped. June 2017. Edward and Jill attended the ceremony, the presentation and the luncheon. Rochester Bridge Trust. The Rochester Bridge Trust chamber plaque commemorating its founders, of whom one was Sir Robert Knowles. He and other wealthy friends paid for a bridge across the Medway at Rochester to replace the Roman one that had been washed away. The bridge was replaced in the 19th century, but the trust they set up continues in a healthy state and helps with grants for engineering education as one of its objectives. There is a service of Thanksgiving for the benefactors annually, which was attended by a few family members in 2017. The stained glass window commemorating Sir Robert Knowles in the Chamber House Hall. Charlotte Street, Milton Regis, was the home of John Wildish Knowles, brother of Edward, born 1836. We have letters headed with his address describing the ups and downs of the family to his grandson in Newcastle, so possibly there is another branch of the family in that area. Orchard Villa in North Street, Milton, the first home of Stuart and Florence Knowles in 1934, with orchards out the back, a front garden with lovely trees, and a wall topped with railings. In 2015, no orchards, just houses, no front garden, trees or railings, just a very large house, now with a convenience store adjoining. Knowles gatherings at Ivan and Yvonne's home in Tankerton, attended by 4 different branches of the family. They all have an ancestry in common down through the centuries to Edward Knowles of Milton Regis, born in 1836, who grew the local business of his father into the beginnings of a county-wide, plus Scottish and Irish, business inheritance for his descendants. christening of Thomas Knowles, son of Edward and Vicky. A short video clip of Norman Knowles and his wife Mary, and his father John, known as Jack, his sister Jacqueline, and their daughter and son. The last photo, and the only one we possess of him, William of Sheerness, whose research, cataloguing and sharing all his tree information and story writing with Jill has enabled us to consolidate and continue his work. He died in 2001, but would have been delighted that his 16 years of research is now shared with Knowleses across countries and continents.